Alright, so cab time. So one of the inaccuracies in this model that I mentioned previously that really irritates me is how wrong Norscott got the Norscott got the cab on this. These windows are flipped. The window in the front is a bit too small, and I think that's about it. The biggest gripe was that this window should be here and vice versa. You can look at the D8 cab as an example. I got a few D8s off the internet that were heavily used and pretty much broken, and so I was able to get a relatively good deal on the cabs. So what I'm going to do is create a hybrid between these two cabs. That is honestly not going that fast. So, razor saw it is. Alright, so I'm going to use the vise, and I'm going to hopefully keep this thing from getting crushed by putting some wood in here. It's just a little bit too wide, so take it over to the bandsaw and cut some material off. This desk was well worth the time it took to make the expansion. Now I have a saw that I use regularly. Alright, a much more stable and safe setup here. So I've taken 2 pieces of scrap wood, put them in the gap so that this won't get crushed, and then I put pieces of wood on the outside to act as a little bit better of a grip, because metal against metal, or metal against painted metal, isn't going to give me a very good grip. So this is going to be much more stable than putting it on the desk, which I was doing earlier, which is anything but safe. So let's continue where we left off. Alright, let's make our bottom cut. Now let's get the files out and grind that back a little bit more. Got quite a bit of material to get off of here, so I'm going to use my more aggressive file for that first bit. Just going to make sure I don't mar this up, because I want to keep that. Alright, so here's my plan. So I mocked this up, just checked it out, and let me turn it around so that you guys can see it. I'm not going to use all of the D8 cab. I'm going to use a combination of the 2 cabs together. The D8 cab right here is about the level that it sits. You can see there's a gap under it. That's for the platform, but the window on the D8 cab sits way too high, and it's narrower, much more narrow than the hood on here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hybrid the two cabs together. I'm going to take and cut the back out of here and use the rear end of this cab, and then I'm going to cut the whole front of it out, and I'm going to use this one, and in doing so I'm going to separate this from the doors, and then I will be able to make the doors open and close. I'll figure that part out later, but what I plan on doing for that is just creating basically a frame behind here out of brass, and then I'll make two basic post hinges so that the doors can swing out and open, which will allow me to reposition this window. Again, my earlier complaint was that it sat kind of like a cell window. It's super low, out of line with the rest of the windows, and it doesn't really work. So what I will do is scoot it up to about this height, and then remove material from the top, and so basically I'll just reposition it. The roof of this one I'm going to cut, I think I'm going to cut off completely, or maybe I'll make it come with the back of it. That actually might be a better plan, is to come back and cut here, and then make a cut up right there, and then have this roof slide in over, because at the back the two roofs are the same width. It's where the doors come in that the D8 cab becomes narrower than the D10 cab. So we're going to use, it's going to be a hybrid of the two cabs. It's going to be a lot of work to get all this cut neatly and evenly, all in the name of getting a well-detailed cab. But in the process, we're going to gain doors that open and close, which is going to make the model even more unique. All right, so let's dissect a cab. The cuts are getting a little bit more difficult now that I'm cutting into where the vise is holding it down, because it's squeezing pressure out of the blade, but I do believe that I've cut down far enough. So let's take it out of the vise. Nice. So as you can see, the blade came right across the inside, making my work a lot easier, because all I have to do is cut through that much material, not the thickness of the top of the cab. Now for the second cut. Let's see, it's the best way to rig this up. Well, I'm giving myself a lot of material to work with. I'm gonna cut this back farther later, but right now I just want to do it this way so that I can save myself more material to cut off later, so that I don't accidentally cut off too much now. That sounds great. All right, we have some open cab. All right, so slight change of plans in regards to how we're going to do the cab. So the back of the cab is going to remain the same as we've been working on already. I'm going to still use the back half of the D11 cab, and then the side windows of the D8 cab, and I'm gonna cut it right here and remove all this front area. And then what I was originally going to do was take this cab, cut it there, and then use the doors, put a frame behind them and make them swing, and then take this part and just basically mount it up a little bit higher on here to correct this discrepancy between this top of the window frame and this door. But the more I looked at the Norskott D11 cab and then pictures of the actual D11N, the more I've realized that Norskott messed up their cabs like completely. The windows are too big, they're too tall. The real Caterpillar cabs have a little bit smaller window and more metal on the tops and bottoms, probably for more rollover protection. So I'm not going to use any of the front of this, and instead I'm going to make it out of brass. So I've picked up some brass here that is about the same thickness as the die cast, and I'm going to use this and basically recreate this entire A-shaped frame here out of brass, which will be great too, because then on the inside of the, there's our little cab mullet. On the inside of this, I'll be able to create basically an internal skeleton to help hold everything together, and I will be able to take and attach and I'm just pretending that this is the brass, but I'll be able to take and attach that to the brass skeleton on the inside to get more support if I want, or I can just leave as is and then use the attachment point here as my biggest strength point for holding it in place. I'll see how it looks, because again, we're going to have this on here helping hold everything in place as well. So it will be definitely secure. And then the doors I'm going to completely make out of brass as well. I have some thinner yet thick brass sheet here, and I will cut that out, and then we'll make the doors. Now the biggest challenging part of this whole making the doors and windows from brass is replicating this little raised edge right here. This is basically simulating the gasket that goes around the window, and I think is one of the biggest parts on the model that makes the realism really stand out as far as a cab. You'll see a lot of models where it has this, but it's not painted black to simulate that gasket, and I think it really does take away from the model. So having that in there is important to me, because it keeps everything looking fluid and just looks more realistic. So I have these thinner strips of brass, and I will take and bend these into this shape and insert it into the hole that I cut in the brass to create that cab. All right. Whoa. There, I didn't have enough speed going, and so it kind of got bogged down. Probably should add a little bit more oil. Tinsel! It's Christmas. Alright. My oh my. Very holy. Okay. So we got holes, man. So now I'm just gonna go and drill the interproximal spots out. Got my dental tool here, the interproximal surfaces, and the centerpiece will fall out. Then I'll come back with a file, clean the edges up, and hopefully have a front window for the cab. Oh, or not. Aha, I have a better idea. So, this is what we got so far. It's kind of hard to see, but there's score marks on there. And those are the lines that will be cut or ground back later to make the absolute outside, and then going around the perimeter of these holes. As you can see, these ones were actually 5 millimeter or 0.5 millimeters too low in those corners, but it's not a big deal. But yeah, so I'm just going to go in with the handpiece, and then we're going to get rid of those interproximal areas. I was going to try to use the drill bit, but they're too narrow, and so the drill bit just jumps to the sides. This week on Harbor Freight Vice, I've got the brass, man. What are you going to give me for it? I'll give you a bit. It is very aggressive sounding. But I'm not entirely sure how I feel about this option either, because if it gets in there, it likes to want to jump. Man. Decisions. A million ideas bouncing through my head right now. I'm not sure which one I want to use. Alright, idea number 2 is a cutting wheel. Let's see if a better result. The cable for my handpiece does not like being at that angle. I think I'm going to rig up like a track and attach it to the ceiling, and then hang my handpiece from that so I can slide it along the table like this way. So I'm going to see what they have at the hardware store that would help me do that, because right now it's like set up ideally for a right-handed person, and I am not right-handed, so I think I need to get this settled, sorted out, so I can use my stuff better. Will it fit? It will. Okay. Alright, I'm caving to the pressure. I was using the file and getting burnt out with it. So, I'm going to, I have this cutting bit, which just so happens to be a 3mm diameter bit, lined up with each end of this section right here. So I'm going to try and use this cutting bit and just shave off that last, it's like a 0.5 millimeter of material. Yes, I know you're not supposed to use a drill press for milling purposes, but you know what? We're going to live dangerously today. Like we do all the time. Well, not really. to get in there with the file just a little bit, but that wasn't bad. The aesthetic appeal of a diabetic hobby seal. Alright. Come to be this. That was even better than the first one. I got a little bit closer. Man, I don't even know if I want to try to use the file. If I want to just use this to get it. It's in the screen now. The glare really screws with the focus, huh? But yeah, pleased with it. Compare it to the OG, you can tell what I did to make it bigger. And again, this window is going to be a little bit smaller. Flip my monitor around here. This is going to be a little bit smaller, obviously, because we're going to be lining it with brass, but it looks better than this one. So the first panel is done for the most part. I still need to put obviously the inside trim in there, but I just wanted to knock this one out first, and I'll be able to use it basically to trace out my next one. Let's figure out a better way to do that. Okay, yeah. So now I'm going to start incrementally taking material off, just using this as a jig or a reference point. Let's use the other one because that one has putty on it. So you can see the reference line, that silver line, and where it compares to the tank. I don't want it to sit behind the tank because then the door is not going to be able to swing open. So I'll just continue to incrementally take little bits of material away until I have it right where I want it. And I think it's actually pretty close on this one. The light is reflecting against my lens. Can't see. Alright, let's put the roof on. Ah, dexterity is lost with gloves. Right. Alright. Pop that in place. It'll probably actually sit out a little further. I think we're right about there. Oh, and I've already applied the flux. I'm going to heat this part first because it is the thicker of the brass. Remember, you're not applying the flame directly to the flux because you'll just burn it off. If you can, apply the flame to the other side. See if I got it hot enough. Oh yeah. Ooh, you got it hot enough. And I'm just letting gravity do the rest of the work for me. Apply it at the top, letting it run down. And where I see it get too thick, I just apply a little bit more heat so I can make it run through. And we'll let it cool. Alright, I got a base mock-up here. Everything in place minus doors which we need to cut. But I am pretty pleased with this. It's coming along well. Alright, so I learned something else about the Norscot D11R. If you've ever looked at this and been like, huh, it really does look out of scale. Not only were the windows screwed up, but the hood is too low. The hood right here is supposed to be just a little bit higher than that point. The hood is supposed to match up with the bottom of that rear window right there. So the hood is supposed to be about up to here because of the cab, and it's not sitting completely flat right now. But the cab is supposed to be twice as tall as the hood, so the hood comes up to about the midpoint of the cab. That's why this model has always looked off to me. It's because the friggin' hood is too low on it. Updates! Alright, so things have been done. I have stripped the paint off of the cab, and let's see here, we have the base attached to this. I showed it to you guys before, but the base was a little whack. I redid it. This one's much better. So this stuff all fits together here quite nicely. I've also evened up that hole, and then using the same method that I did to create the front panel, I have created doors into your soul. I took two pieces and soldered them together so that I could create both doors evenly. Same method. I drilled holes in all of the corners, and then I used the little milling bit to come through and clean up all the edges, and then I went back in with a file to make it even prettier. I was going to do a score and snap method with this one, but you know what? I've been having a lot of fun with that milling machine, or my little milling table at least. So I was able to do that, and bada bing, bada boom. Hey, we got doors over here. Right, so when we last left off, we were talking about doors, and I was also talking about a cap for the roof. So I've gone and done that. I took a piece of this thin, it's like half, I think it's ½ millimeter shim, and it's really cool because you can cut it with scissors. So I cut out the shape of the roof, and then I cut it a little bit wide and folded the sides down, and then on the outside of that I soldered in, of course I don't have it out to show you the example, but it's that nice thin brass that I have, and I soldered it around the edge. Alright, we have an opening and closing door. It only took forever to get the hinges right, so I had to resolder these in many different positions till I got this figured out. I'm sure those of you who are really good at geometry or engineers are probably going, well, there's a simple way to figure that out. Unfortunately, I didn't know that simple way. What I ended up doing was just putting the hinge pins directly under, I'll take the door out in a second and show you guys, but yeah, I need to do a little bit of trimming. I left this long intentionally right here because I wanted to make sure that I had enough material for when I finally got everything in the exact right spot. Alright guys, I'm going to show you this real quick, then I gotta go make dinner. I'm kind of, my microphone clip pulled out some chest hair, that kind of hurt. Okay, we have doors, man. I'm friggin' excited. The geometry is not perfect, but it's probably stuff that I'm going to notice. But the doors work, man. This is going to get trimmed back a little bit. I think I said earlier I wanted to leave myself some extra space on the front so that once I got all the doors aligned, things would be good to go. But check this out. I've never been so excited about opening a door, but I am when they're on my model. That's great. It worked out well. I'm holding this together with my fingers using the false. But yeah, frick, I'm excited. This is awesome. I don't know what else to say. I was really perplexed in the beginning as to how I was going to get this done. I wasn't sure if the solder, my soldering job was going to be strong enough. I'm going to take it apart and show you guys what I did. It's like taking Darth Vader's helmet off. Luke, I am your dozer. So, as you guys can see, just did a simple post on each end. Alright, so as per the usual in my channel, I like to change plans. So instead of the second dozer having an opening closing cab, and I'll explain why in a second, we're going to do something a little bit different. And the why is because, as you guys know, I have these tiny little pin hinges on here. Well, throughout the process of building this and putting it together and testing it out, making sure everything works, I've broken those hinges about 5 times, and it's just the way it is because it's such a small joint. They break frequently. I'm not comfortable selling a model that has a part on it that's intended to work that has any chance of breaking at all. So I'm not going to sell the second model. And originally when I intended on selling the second model, I hadn't even planned on doing a big cab build like this. But when these models are all said and done, there's no way that anybody is going to want to pay what I want to charge for the man hours that went into it, which is fine. You know, I got into this hobby originally to build models for myself, and then, you know, it's been fun selling some on the side. So these ones are going to get sold. So what are we going to do with the second model? Well, I'm going to make a partially fictitious machine. So in my 1986, let me explain what this is real quick. This is a Caterpillar Performance Handbook. It's one of the many resources I use when I build my models. It has measurements and equipment options for specific years, and they're really nifty. Some people think they're worth a lot of money. They really aren't. So I have a 1989 one, or no, 86, which is the first year the D11 came out, and it does not show a cushion blade being offered for the D11N. Now, a cushion blade is a blade that is basically backed by some suspension so that it can be pressed against the back of a scraper or any other machine to help it through material, also known as a push cat. However, in my 1991 Caterpillar Performance Guide, you can see here I'm trying to look it upside down. The cushion blade is right here, and it says it has been equipped on the D11N through the D11-8, or looking at it upside down, the D11-8 all the way through the D11N, which means later in the D11's tenure, Caterpillar decided to offer a cushion blade for it, which is funny because in my newer books, a cushion blade is not offered on the Caterpillar D11R. So that's what we're going to do, is we're going to build the second one into a push cat, and I'm kind of fond of the Southern California style push cats that have the open cabs on them. So it's going to be an open cab push cat, and I'm going to make the full sunshade protection cab that you see on a lot of the SoCal machines. It's a cab that reaches out pretty much almost to the front of the hood, just offers a little bit more shade for the operator. Alright, so it's time to bend some brass bar. This is just a very thin strip of brass bar. And in the vise here I've mounted a 2.5 millimeter drill bit that I'm going to bend this against, because all these curves have been made with a 3 millimeter drill bit. So I hope that this will allow this to fit inside there. This is my first time trying to do this, so let's see how this turns out. I think I'm going to start my bend in the, or start my strip in the middle. Probably be the easiest to hide if it's at the top, because you're looking down at a model, so that seam will probably be easier to hide in there. And let's see, I think I'm going to start at this end, but I need to file this flat real quick. So the first bend is just going to be a nice basic 90. Might actually be a better idea to, I don't know. It actually seems to be working. Uh-oh. Done goofed. Okay, take that out and finish it off outside. I'm gonna clip it a little bit long and then fit it in the rest of the way. Alright, that worked out great. So I'm gonna use that same method for all the other ones. Come on camera, focus. It's kind of hard to tell because it's all the same color, but it's there. I'll figure out how to solder that in a bit. Alright, so these are soldered in place. I did all of them. It was pretty easy. I thought it was going to be more difficult than it was, but I basically rigged them all up. Oh, that was smart. Put them in the vise, and then I just wrapped the solder around after I applied my flux, and then heated it from the back, and it was able to solder them in place, so I didn't have to use glue or anything, and I was still able to maintain my pin hinges. So right now what I'm doing is I took the file and I ground this down a little bit more because it was sticking out too much. And now to round out the edges, I'm just going to take a little sanding stick here. And I mentioned earlier that these sanding sticks kind of will wrap around whatever you're sanding on. So if you want to maintain a square edge, definitely don't use these. But I want to try to round out this edge now, because again, we're simulating the gasket that goes around these windows. So I'm actually going to use a bit more of an aggressive abrasive here. This is a little too hardcore, and this is just right. And then I'm going to go over it with that yellow one, which is a much more softer sandpaper, and should help round these edges out. Alright, cab is complete for the most part. We obviously need to do the interior, and there are tiny little details that I'm going to put on here as well, but as you can see, the gasket turned out really well. I'm really happy with the result, and it actually went much quicker than I expected it to as well. Also got the little grab rails on there. I ended up finding out, so I think earlier I complained that I couldn't find a size of wire between the really small. I don't think you can even see it on screen. Oh, I can't see it on my viewfinder, but it's right there. That's the, it's basically 0.51 millimeter, and then I have 1 mil wire as well. And I was bummed out because I couldn't find anything else between the two. Well, I finally found one that was like 0.8, which I think is the perfect size for these, the cab mounted grab rails. So I got the two that are on next to the windshield that you would use to grab as you're pulling yourself up, and then there's the ones that are up above the cab as well. And yeah, it's all come together quite nicely. Really pleased with it. So that concludes the episode. I will see you guys next time when we get started on the open cab for the dozer, the other dozer, the Pushcat, and then we're gonna start working on the interiors for these as well. Guys, take it easy, and I'll see you later.